every single day that you move forward, make sure you find something that's more important to getting you out of bed than that's keeping you in the bed.
What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
In case you missed it,
technology has made the world much, much smaller. You can now network and interact with individuals from Montreal, Sydney, Malawi, or Europe, all in the same day, heck, within a few hours.
Available everywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Chain social impact hero, and he is a good one. I'm excited about this one. So our guest today knows that goals, big or small, aren't easy to reach. He's an author, former NFL player, consultant speaker, and fellow Trojan, which makes him extra special to me. He's not only in shape physically, but also mentally tough and has put in the time on and off the field to get to a sound place where he can help others. He's has a naturally infectious energy, inspiration, and openness that connects him with audiences and anyone he comes across. I can vouch for that. And I know that was the case for me, like I said. So he's a born leader who wasn't always in the spotlight and led from wherever he could. He now teaches organizations how to become more productive and profitable by embracing the principles of positive leadership. He's a consummate learner who knows the value of a coach and has learned from some of the best. He's determined, persistent, and knows that rewards come from a whole lot of effort, and he can help you get to where you want to be because he's been there himself. Please welcome the authentic, engaging, compassionate author of Permission to Dream, The Relentless Pursuit of Greatness, Dig, Discover Your Depth, Determination, and Destiny Through Adversity, the professional reminder, number 41 in Cardinal and Gold, Thomas R. Williams. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Vic, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me. I'm excited. And I do have to add, I don't know if I'm as good a shape as you might have mentioned. My family and I just moved to Denver, and so this elevation is kicking my butt, man. I can barely even make it up the stairs. So I got some work cut out for me, man. But pleasure to be here. I'm excited to dive into this conversation and talk with you.
Yeah, maybe you should call up Jerry Rice and do some of that elevation training, that he was so famous for back in the day. He'd bring the other guys up and no one could hang.
Right. No, I feel you on that. And it's interesting because, not too long ago, the Denver Nuggets played the Los Angeles Lakers in the basketball playoffs. And so we're thinking, being from LA, living in Denver, LA's got this in the bag. But you saw guys over on the sidelines sucking wind, bending over after they just run a sprint. It is no joke. It's not just called Mile High, for fun. It is legit. And man, I'm definitely getting my butt kicked in it.
Well, I can definitely empathize. I've been to Colorado a few times on hiking trips. And last time we went a couple years ago to Breckenridge, my wife and I with some other friends of ours, we were talking about, we're going to hike. We're going to do all this stuff. And I'm like, I need to train. I work out every day, but I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. So literally I was doing 200 to 300 lunges a day, with weights and all this stuff. Cause I'm like, that wasn't going to help with altitude, but I'm like, I at least need to get my legs ready. and it worked. Yeah. We're at 13,000 feet and they're all dying. And I'm like, let's go. Let's keep going and everything.
Wow.
And so
good for you.
At least it helped. At least it helped somewhat. And, they were struggling. So that trip, it seemed to work, but
yeah.
I guess that's from, maybe that's my California roots now living in, flat Houston I used to run, all sorts of hills when I lived in California. So maybe my body remembers, who knows, but so you say you're not in shape, right? You're married, you're you're living in a different place. You still work out a lot?
I still work out as much as I can, man. And now working out for the kids, the little ones, like our oldest daughter wakes up on caffeine. Now she goes to sleep like she's, extremely exhausted, but she wakes up on caffeine, Red Bull, like it's almost like nonstop. So for me personally, I have to wake up, work out just to get prepared for her arrival every single day. So I still do it as much as I can. We have a slogan and a saying in one of the accountability chats that I'm in is that slow motion is better than no motion. So, a little something is better than a lot of nothing. And so every single day I try to break a sweat by doing a little something just to keep the body fresh and the mind too. I've noticed that it's equally as important to the mind as it is to the body. And so, it's part of my ritual, my morning routine or daily routine. Sometimes I can't get it in the morning, but I'll definitely try to get something.
Yeah, it is important. And, we talked about this the other day, being a girl dad as well. I have 3 grown daughters now, but when they were that age, when they were your daughter's ages, it was definitely more challenging. And, you get it, you play around with them, roll around and have fun. And, those are all fun times. So enjoy that. Enjoy it. Because, and I'm sure, old guys like me have told you this before, but you blink and then they're graduating high school and you're like, shoot, I'm trying
to remember that right now, Rick, in the midst of changing some younger diapers. So our youngest is 10 months and then we have one on the way. So I'm going to be in the diaper stage for, I figure, like at least the next 3 years, which is exciting because we get to hold on to some of those memories. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes in the struggle, it's hard to remember that there is a mountaintop.
It is. It really is. And I remember having, cousins and older family members that would tell me that, and I would be like, I just blow them off being a young guy. We were pretty young parents, when we had our first, and congrats on the new baby, by the way. But now, I had to learn that later in life, and, you're younger, you seem to have learned, some of those things that I had to pick up on later about, being more present and everything. And I know you've gone through, your own journey in getting there as well, which we'll dive into a little bit. But let's start off with the first question I ask, which is, we have you on the show as a social impact hero, because we see you as someone that spreads positive change, someone that whose actions help to have a positive impact on humanity and make others better. And that's, by our definition, which is an acronym, and we can go through it a little bit, but that makes you a hero. So my first question to you and every guest on here is, do you see yourself as a hero?
I do. And the reason why I say that, because I've been exposed to so many heroes growing up, not raised with my biological father. And now at 38, we've had a really good growing relationship for probably the past 20 years. So when I was 18, but growing up, I saw men who were heroes. My mom, who is my first initial exposure to a hero. And even though she didn't have a cape, she had superpowers. And so all of the men that, weren't my dad, but they were my coaches, my principals, my teachers, mentors in the neighborhood or in the community. I've had exposure to a hero. So I have firsthand seen what it is to be a hero. And I think most importantly is to add value, to support others, and be a padding between somebody, who they are and what they're going through, what they're experiencing, some of those hardships and trials and tribulations. And so from the time I was, 5 years old, and my mom would, look underneath my bed or look in the closet when I thought the boogeyman or a monster was there, she was so brave and bold, or all the way to the times where I would be in the scariest times of my athletic career. And I had coaches who spoke life, spoke positivity into my world and exposed me to a different way of thinking, because growing up in a mindset of adversity as well as poverty. And so I'm not just talking about financial poverty, I'm talking about mental poverty, is that we always see the opposite side of the coin, right? And so it's almost like we see 99% of the negative and only 1% of the positive. So we don't necessarily get our hopes up or get excited about the positive because we've been so focused on the 99. And so for a long time, Rick, I was exposed to that mindset. And I thought about all the negative things that were going to happen, as opposed to not understanding or living in the uncertainty of the positives that could happen as well. So I think now gaining that superpower from some of my superheroes growing up, I definitely can identify with being a superhero. But I don't have a cape. I think I've been lucky enough to steal some of the superpowers that I've been exposed to.
And I love your answer, Thomas, because it gives credit to others, right? It gives credit to others that have made you, the person that you are today. And second, because it really amplifies what we want to share with everyone on this program every week, is that anyone can be a hero, that it doesn't take a cape, right? It's not in the comic book sense of the word. It's in you just have to, lend someone a hand. You just have to say a kind word. You just have to mentor someone in some capacity to make them better, lead them in some way. As, it sounds like you've had, I know you've had, you've been led by some of the best, as I said in the intro. And, I do want to dive into that a little bit, but I feel it's beneficial because you did already touch on it. I feel, I know your story a little bit, but I think it's beneficial for our audience to know, every hero has their origin story. Okay. And, you didn't get bit by a spider or something, but in terms of, how did you go from, a little boy with no hope to a determined young man that received an athletic scholarship and then, went on to have the success that you had with a football career and, now post football, but how did that all develop?
Yeah, I mean, I think, exposure determines the level of our dreams. And so when I was 6 years old, my mom took me to an Oakland A's baseball game. Being from Northern California, it was either you were an Oakland A's fan or you were a San Francisco Giants fan. And so I'm talking about the old school San Francisco Giants, the Barry Bonds, the Will Clarks, Matt Williams, Royce Clayton, like the list goes on. And I remember going to an Oakland A's baseball game because at the time, and it still might be this way, but the Oakland A's tickets were cheaper, and so that's what we could afford. So we sat in the right field bleachers, and at 6 years old, I was like, I found out what I want to do. I want to go play professional sports. And so, Rick, I tell people all the time, I'm an only child, which means I was my mom's favorite growing up. And one of the things that I learned is that because I was exposed to the dream, I could smell it. I could see it. I actually was there in the stadium when the athletes were playing. And so I was like, I want people to stop what they're doing to come watch me play sports. And so it began on the journey. But as we know that, from the inception of a dream to the completion of it becoming a reality is a very long time. It could be a long 365 days, or for me, it could be a long 17 years. And so I remember one of my first hiccups and hurdles in life where, you have to set your mind and you have to create boundaries and barriers mentally of other people's limitations versus your expectations. And so my mom came home when I was in 6th grade from a parent-teacher conference, and normally she got home around 5 o'clock after work, and this night she got home around 5:36, and it was a little bit darker outside, and she comes in with tears in her eyes, slammed the door, and she was quiet. And I was like, Mom, what's wrong? And she's wiped her tears away and said, do you know what your 6th grade teacher told me? I said, I don't know, maybe I'm good in math. I'm great at recess, and I'm phenomenal at lunchtime. I mean, normally that's what they said. And what happened was, he said, by the time you're 16 years old, you're going to be the leader of a gang, shot, stabbed, and killed. And right then and there, I went to embrace my mom because at the time I felt like I was the protector of the home. And I hugged her, and I made this vow and this pact to myself. I said, one day I'm going to give you tears of joy, because right now you're experiencing tears of pain. So I'm going to give you tears of joy. And so I was on the quest, Rick, for the next however long it took to finally give my mom tears of joy. And so was a baseball player all the way up until high school, until I had one of my first superheroes, who was my coach, Ed Santapadre, who I believe embodies what a teacher / coach, principal, advisor, mentor, really kind of like those guardrails for our young youth, especially somebody like myself that was confused, lost, and troubled. He called me up one day in the summer going into my 9th grade and said, hey, we would love for you to come play football. What do you think? I was like, Coach, I'm going to the major leagues. I don't want to play football because I don't want to get hurt. He's like, well, all right, sounds good. He called me every single Wednesday at lunchtime. every single Wednesday at lunchtime for about 6 weeks. And it got so bad, Rick, that my mom and I used to have this thing where I would look at the caller ID, because that's right when first, caller ID would show up on your house phone. And it would say Ed Santa Padre. And so I'd hand my mom the phone and I'd give her that symbol of like, no, tell him I'm not here. Like, X is up like this. And she would answer the phone and, oh, hi, Coach Santa Padre. Yeah, Thomas is right here. So she forced me to be a man of integrity, accountability. Thomas, if you're going to say no, don't put me on the line. If you want to say no or whatever your answer is, you talk to him. And so I had to face the realities of hearing his voice every single time. And he would try to, persuade me. Oh, Thomas, that's great. You can play professional baseball, but what are you going to do this fall? And his anticipation was, I want to get our kids who are, troubled, might have been considered as at-risk youth. I want to give them a chance and give them a community. And so one day I looked at my mom and she's like, what are you going to do with the rest of summer? We had about 2 weeks left. And I said, well, I'm probably going to sleep in, enjoy the rest of my 2 weeks. She goes, well, I got a better idea. Either you can get a job or you can play football. And I said, I'll play football. And so I started playing football from there. But what I realized very quickly, Rick, is that football taught me everything I thought I was missing in my life. I look at, my life as a 13, 14-year-old, and I was missing structure. I was missing discipline, commitment, affirmation, congratulations, something to pursue, something to accomplish. And so football gave me that, as well as, 40 other brothers coming from only child. Like, I loved going to practice. I loved being around my brothers. I loved, getting yelled at by the coach. I loved running, for the next 15 minutes because one of us messed up. I love that, camaraderie. And so I fell in love with football. And then all throughout high school, football became the driver and baseball took a back seat. And then 4 years later, I earned a scholarship to go play at the University of Southern California. And the reason why it's so cool for me to say that as 38-year-old, because I was the first person in my immediate family to go to college. And so I know a lot of people think that college might not be the way, and I'm right there with them. I just know that college was my way. And so it got me out of my hometown. It got me out of my comfort zone, and it pushed me mentally, athletically, academically, as well as, emotionally and spiritually. And so that's how I've learned the journey of, I don't call it self-help. I call it self-help for me. And so I've been able to find the things that I needed the most in my life through my journey of sports, as well as the transitions of going from level to dimension to dimension. And that's how I'm here at 38 years old, 2 kids, living in Denver with my family, and an author of a couple of books, as well as, a huge advocate of people can go from where they are to where they want to be.
I thank you for breaking it all down, because I think that'll give our audience a lot of perspective as we dive into, some of the other parts of the show, as to, some of the reason why I wanted to have you on the show. And I, there's just what you were sharing. It's just so full of different lessons that you learned along the way and impacts. And we'll talk towards the end about a spark moment, where someone's actions have an effect on your life that continue, far beyond. And, Coach Santa Padre or your mom, or like you rattled off like 3 or 4 spark moments without even realizing it. So when we get to the end, I expect you to come up with something new when we get to the end. And I'm sure you'll have them. But what I'm really curious about is that, obviously that brings us to today of how you are, how you became the man that you became, your best version of yourself right now, and continue to work on that self-help for yourself, right? Self-help for you, and helping others. From what I can tell, you were always more of that, leader led by your actions, leader that led by, maybe more of the silent type leader. I don't know if you were very vocal in the locker room, but the silent type, but where did that come from? Like, where did you really learn about leadership? I knew you had all the different mentors, but where was how did you really grow into becoming a leader?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I think I became the vocal leader because it didn't always start out that way. It was the person who I was just observing from the successes and mistakes from others. Like very early on, I was lucky enough to play varsity football in the 10th grade, which means I was around the older kids. And so I didn't necessarily have the opportunity to be immature, because I was asked to be more mature than my age might have, led me to be. Mm-hmm. And I also think, Rick, one of the greatest factors for me was having a finite amount of time. I only had 4 years in high school to impress colleges, to get my grades up as high as possible, to get the test results and scores that I needed so that I could get to the place after high school. And now, I had heard all along in high school from coaches and other players about these other great players who were, 5, 10, 15, 20 years older than me that didn't amount to anything because they had all of the talent in the world, but they didn't maximize the time. And so they allowed drugs, alcohol, dating, ditching classes, peer pressures, all these other things get in their way. And so I remember vividly one conversation I had with a lady by the name of Sandy Rogers, who was the yard monitor in high school. And so she would wear the yellow, vest and do the crosswalk in the morning. And she would, do traffic after school in the parking lot. And her son, a couple of years before I got to high school, named Josh Rogers, went to the University of Oregon. And he was extremely highly talented football player. And I asked her, like, what was it that set your son apart? See, because I crave clues. I don't necessarily have the example and everything, but I can find the proof in everything. And so I would ask her, like, what did your son do? And she said, immediately he stopped drinking soda. So you know what I did, Rick, that day? I stopped drinking soda. At lunchtime, when other kids would drink soda, I drank Snapple or water. And I'd keep talking to her, and she'd say he stopped going to parties. He didn't drink alcohol in high school. He didn't allow peer pressure. So I literally copied his test, and I just pasted on mine. And so I started to do the things that he did. If he went to college, he got a scholarship. He obviously knew what it took. And she was, I guess, aware enough and present enough to be able to almost give me his keys to success. And so I took them and I ran with them. And so I think it was having a game plan, having a roadmap, seeing that worked. She could have sat there and said he did somersaults 50, 60 times, in between passing periods, during high school. And I would have done those somersaults because he knows what it takes to get there. And so I just literally copy and pasted. And then again, understanding that, okay, when you first step into high school, you got 4 years. 365 days goes by, you have 3 years, you have 2, you have 1. And so I never wanted to be the person who was trying to make up. I wanted to be ahead of the curve. I wanted to do so much that once I got to the end of the road, they're like, hey, you've done even more than you possibly could have imagined, as opposed to you're coming up short. So those were the things that were monumental in my life that gave me that mindset and that perspective at an early age.
It speaks a lot to the power of, a role model. And, we already talked about mentors and coaches and everything, which we know played an important part of your life. I think one thing that is important to bring to light is what you described happens for a lot of kids who are 15 or 16 or whatever. They'll see a role model. They'll see someone that has graduated a few years before them or has had success, or they'll get advice from an adult, someone in their lives, and even I love in Dig, which we'll dig into a little bit, no pun intended. We'll dig into a little bit, with Jackie the barber and, giving advice to Darren. But what I want to get at, what I want to touch on, Thomas, is that, and I don't know the statistics, but 80 or 90% or 95% of kids never do anything with that.
Yeah.
It just goes whoop, whoop, and it's gone. Okay. So what was it for you that you said, was it that promise to your mom, or what was it for you that you said, I'm going to because taking, and I know you talk about this, but translating something into action, that's where most people lose it. Most people lose it, right? It's all, they read a book, they do nothing with it, right? And nothing happens. So where does that come from, and how were you able to translate it all into action? I know you did it, right? You did it, but what was the really driving force for all that?
Seeing success. If somebody right now, if if I all of a sudden have a whole bunch of cavities and I see somebody with a beautiful smile, beautiful teeth, they have 0 cavities, I'm going to ask them the question, what is it that you do? Oh, I drink water instead of sodas. I floss, I brush my teeth. I go to the dentist. I mean, all of these things. The reason why I mentioned this is because I do have a dentist appointment coming up. So it just was the first thing that popped in my mind.
And you do have a beautiful smile too.
I appreciate that. And because I've listened to people, and see, here's the thing that I don't know if we don't trust people or if we feel like we have more time or it doesn't matter. But I'm to the notion of, if it works for other people, try it and see if it works for yourself. And so, going back to high school, perfect example. Actually, this was in middle school. And so this talks to my point and principle of, if you don't have the example, find the proof. So I'm in 7th grade. My buddy Todd Early, who back in the day, he's married, has kids, so he's not this guy, but he was the ladies' man. I mean, he was the coolest kid in middle school. He had the coolest clothes. He had the dance moves. He had the coolest hair. He was an athlete. I mean, everything I wanted, he had it. And he had good grades, straight A's. So one day I was at Todd's house, who lived less than a mile away from my house. And I was on my way from the room where we played video games and hung out to the refrigerator, one of my favorite places to go in any house. And so I look on Todd's refrigerator and it's his report card, straight A's. And this wasn't like from 6th grade. This was like current. This is recent. And I was like, damn, that's what I wish I had. What does that feel like? And so as I opened the door, got whatever food I was eating, I remember going home, Rick, and like the next couple of days, I called Todd after school. Hey, you want to hang out? You want to play? Nope, can't do it. Next day, nope, can't do it. 3 straight days. He like dissed me. And so I finally asked Todd at school one day, I said, hey man, like, you hang out with me at school, but you don't hang out with me after school. And he goes, Thomas, what's the first thing you do when you get home? I said, play, obviously. He goes, exactly. The first thing I do is I do my homework, and then I play with whatever time I have left over. So if I don't have time because it's dark out, because it's bedtime, I need to, shower, get ready for the next day, I don't do it. So I thought right there, I said, wow, do what you have to do first so you can do what you want to do later. And so all of a sudden, Rick, first semester in 9th grade, going from a 2.3 grade point average as my highest, I went to a 3.5. Why? Because I did what I had to do first every single day, go to practice, do my homework. Now, if I had time to talk on the phone, play video games, go outside and play, then I did. But if I didn't, I wasn't upset. I wasn't worried. And so then that played over into when we would have to do these things in math class called binomials. It's when you like multiply, add, numbers and letters in parentheses. I couldn't tell you how to draw up an equation, but if you gave me an equation right now, I could solve it. Why? Because I went to my 9th grade math teacher's class every single day before school, Mr. Muma, and I went and did all these homeworks. He said, Thomas, it's very simple. In life, you get equations, and in life, to solve the equations, there's a formula. The formula to solve these, it's called FOIL, F-O-I-L, first, outside, inside, last. That's how you solve them. He's like, I can give you 20 questions a night, 100 questions a night, and you should be able to do these all within 30 minutes because you know the formula. Do the formula to solve any equation you want to in life. What's the formula to solve the equation you have in your life? And so for me, I just took that and I ran with it. And so I started to gather more and more formulas to solve equations in life. Now, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I know a lot of smart people in the world. So I'm going to copy what they do, see if it works for me. And if it works, I'm going to keep it as though it's my own. So that's how you become a superhero, because you can pass the knowledge that you've gained to other people. I don't want to come up with trying to do it for the first time. I want to study somebody who does it really, really well and either get to that point or maybe surpass them, only because I spent enough time studying them, I've got enough reps, and I can promise you that this will work.
Yeah, it's the value of hard work, and being able to put in the reps, right? When someone else may stop at 10, you're like, no, I'm going to do 15 because I know that 15 you're going to get better results. Right. That kind of, to quote another athlete, that kind of Mamba mentality, of just, I'm going to put in the extra type work. I gathered you're a Laker fan, but, just hopefully not a Nuggets fan now that you moved. But so in all those things, obviously it's gotten you, it works, right? Obviously the proof is in the pudding. It works in terms of, putting in the reps, learning from others, modeling that success, taking what they modeled and taking action on it, and, translating that into success for yourself. So how do you define success today at this point in your life?
It's funny because I've literally wrote this down. And so when I got done playing football in 2012, I didn't want to be defined anymore by former player, what I used to do. So I just wrote down what is success. And success for me back then was getting paid for what you would do for free. And now I define success by obstacles overcome to obtain it. What's your journey like? Where's your scars? Where's your scabs? What's your calluses? What did you have to overcome to get what you have? And so I respect the person who's gone through the warrior's journey as opposed to the person that just took the helicopter and is at the top of the mountain. I don't necessarily care what view you have. I want to know the struggles that you've overcome, because that's where we can all identify. We can't all identify with becoming first-round draft picks in the NFL or, owning billion-dollar companies. But where we can all identify as human beings walking this earth is struggles, obstacles. For one person, a struggle could be learning how to read because they grew up dyslexic. Another struggle could be somebody who's had to deal with an ailment like autism or another, effect or condition that they've been born with. And for them, success is to hold a steady job and be able to take care and look after themselves. Other people could be, grew up single parent and they went to college. And so now they have a degree or a master's or a PhD. And so I want to know, what's your journey like? What's been the struggle? Let's start with the things that you had to overcome that in order to get to where you are. And so easy enough is said, man. The success equals obstacles overcome to obtain it. An equation goes back to an equation. It's as simple as that. And I love it because if you look at really any person that's had any degree of success, there have been obstacles to get there. For the most part, right? For the most part. I know you've had some, I've had plenty in my life. And that definitely resonates with me. And I know it will with our audience about the journey, because what we talk about iSpark Change is that it's our stories that connect us all. And those struggles are a big part of our stories. That's what makes up, who we are as a human race. And without the struggles, then, there is no, you can't have the success without having to overcome something, right? You look at any hero's journey, any movie, any book, there's always some type of adversity in there. Yeah. So how did, so speaking of a little adversity, I know the transition from athlete to non-athlete, wasn't super easy for yourself. You had to kind of figure it out. So how did you, make that transition and the distinction, between who you are as an athlete and now who you are as a person outside of being an athlete? Yeah, I went to my trusted advisors, Rick, and then I found some new trusted advisors. And so for me, I had to really identify what football was, because everybody who had come before me and stood before me, who had experienced the transition from, collegiate to professional athlete to no more an athlete, they told me that you'll never be able to replicate it. So don't try to fill the void. Just almost embrace it and really part ways with it. And so I was able to identify what football represented. And football represented, ever since I started playing, was the void of my father. And so here I was, thought I could fill the void of my father by replacing it with the love, joy, excitement, cheering, applause, affirmation of football. And then at the end, when football was gone, I had to now I had to go back and I had to resolve that issue with my dad. And so once I was able to do that, I went through years of therapy for emotional, personal, past traumas. I mean, just uncovering so many layers of my own personal onion, and the things that made me tear up, the things that made me uncomfortable, the things that made me push people away. And once I was able to identify that, then it was, okay, now we can move forward because we've patched up our past. And so when I was able to move forward, Rick, I got some great advice from one of my favorite coaches and superheroes, Ken Norton Jr., who said, Thomas, every single day that you move forward, make sure you find something that's more important to getting you out of bed than that's keeping you in the bed, right? And so right now we see there's so many different things of the mental health, of the depression, of the anxiety, and those things like that. I don't think we've necessarily been taught that lesson and that principle that he gave me that morning when we were having coffee in Marina Del Rey, Southern California. And I sat there and he gave that to me, and I stopped drinking my coffee. I stopped eating my breakfast. And I said, wow, that's the North Star. That's the true point that I need to start addressing each morning, each focus with, of make sure what's getting me out of bed is more important than what's keeping me in. And so understanding that, it was, Thomas, if you remove the tackling, the touchdowns, the celebrations on the football field, what did you love about playing football? And I loved people. I love standing in front of 10 men in front of a huddle, getting them to see what physically wasn't in front of us, but was at the end possible. Getting people to see the impossible or the possible and the impossibilities. And that's what I loved. And so I was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And so obviously, it started out slow and I was doing it for free for a very long time, but I always found passion in inspiring people. I wanted people to get to their draft day. That thing that I set out for when I was 6 years old and I finally got there at 23, I wanted to help people do that, Rick. So I wrote down on a piece of paper that I believe anyone, anytime, anywhere can become anything they want to be. I want to be the person that people speak to right before they get ready to do something they don't even think they can do. Why? Because I've had superheroes who I talked to right before I was getting ready to do something I didn't even think I could do. And they were able to talk me through it so that I could actually see more in myself based off of the belief that they had in me. And so I wanted to just emulate that. I wanted to copy and paste and do that for so many people who are walking this earth.
You speak on something that, I know you think this inside, but you didn't really say it in these words for everyone, is that the value of a leader, that a leader can see in those that they're leading things that they can't see in themselves, and they can see the success, if you want, or potential is a better word for that individual. And how has that? I know you've been, as I touched on the intro, you've been coached and led by some of the best, Pete Carroll or Belichick or one of your mentors, John Gordon. In speaking, how have they been able to see that potential for you that you couldn't see in yourself?
Two things. And this is hard for especially young men like myself who either felt abandonment early on, felt isolated, or felt like they had to grow up too soon. These two things are very difficult, which is trust and humility. Now, how do you build trust? By connection. How do you build trust? By time. And the most important thing that any male role model, mentor, coach, figure that I've built that trust with and that I have that humility with, they've always done what they said they were going to do. There's never been any broken promises. If they said, hey, I'm going to meet you here at this time, they were there. If they said, I'm going to call you at this time, they called me. If they said, meet me here at this time, they were there. It wasn't, oh, sorry, I can't make it, or you weren't important. Because a lot of us men who felt those abandonment issues, it takes so long to build trust and it so quickly vanishes. And so for me, I've built that trust over time, and I was humble enough to be able to feel comfortable that I could ask you a question and your answer wouldn't make me feel as though I was as small as I thought I was. I was insecure as I thought I was. And so those people, they were able to fill the gaps and the voids that were internally, spiritually, emotionally in me by showing up, by building the trust, by building the connection, by seeing me through, and by allowing me to utilize their borrowed belief. And so what a great coach does, what a great leader does, is they build trust first before they give any criticism. And so in the work that I do now with John Gordon, in the books that he writes, he talks a lot about, the positive to negative ratios. And so what statistics and studies have shown and proven is that any positive to negative ratio that's 5 to 1, 5 positive interactions versus, to 1 negative interaction, the success rate is substantial. But then when you're getting down to the 3s, the 2s, and to the 1s, it's almost like the success rates don't exist. And so anytime you want to build community, you want to build trust, you want to build relationship and partnership, focus on the interaction ratio, the positive and negative. And how did those coaches do that? They did it because they weren't just coming to tell me when I did, or talking to me when I did something wrong, when I did something bad. They would just come and say, hey, how's it going? How's your day? How's your family? How's your mom? How are you feeling? And then we've had 40 interactions before they said, hey, you know what? You really messed up on this. You didn't do it as good as you could probably possibly do it. Now I'm talking as far as sports. But now if I transition and cross over into like public speaking, you'd mentioned one of my great friends, mentors, and coaches is John Gordon. And John has never, John, can't even tell you how many times he's criticized me because our positive and negative interactions are it's almost probably 50 to 1. And so it doesn't ever feel like he's criticizing me. It feels like he's holding me accountable. He's allowing me to feel like, Thomas, you can do better because of the potential that I see in you. Not that every time we talk, you can do better. It's not like he's griping. He's not moaning and groaning and things. He's pouring into me. And then anytime he might be criticizing me or, allowing me to see something differently, he's already got the initial deposits that are good with me. And so great coaches understand that positive to negative ratio. And then they work with that. They use that to their advantage and not allowing that to be a disadvantage.
I really appreciate the explanation because a couple things, Thomas, is first, you don't have to be a star football player to learn from an individual, to learn trust from an individual, right? It can happen in any situation, in any workplace, anything like that. So that's great to hear from someone that, has had your success and, been coached by some of these big name, quote unquote, people. And then the second part that really speaks to me is the love that comes with that, is that kind of leading with love. And yes, you can have constructive criticism. You can point something out. It is from a place of accountability and love for that individual that you truly want them to be the best that they can be. And it's interesting, you said the 5 to 1 ratio, because I was literally having this conversation with my wife the day before yesterday, because we just launched a new business. She's one of my business partners and we have 2 other partners, and it's a health and wellness business. And I was talking to her about how we need to, whatever our perception is of telling our staff that they're doing well, we need to do it 10 times as much. I said, if we think we're doing enough, we're definitely not. We need to amplify it by 10. And, I don't know if I picked that up from John or wherever I read that, but
so how do you, Rick, how do you do that? So you asked me about, taking something as principle, but then adding the application to that.
Yeah.
What was the thing, or how do you guys move forward and apply that? Like what's your strategy, or what's your formula for allowing that to become, as opposed to just words, becoming an actual, application?
Yeah. Thank you for asking the question, because I think this will really share some perspective for everyone on top of what you said, Thomas. It's really twofold. One, it is creating an environment of culture, knowing that they can make mistakes, that they can grow, that failing is okay, that, it's part of learning, that we want them to express themselves. We want them to share their thoughts, because this is a new business. We want their ideas, and we want to foster an environment of, look, we're all, because one thing we told them from the beginning, we're all at the same level. Just because, we're the owners, it doesn't mean that, we're here, you're here. We're all part of the same team. So, really fostering that team environment and showing them that they matter to the team. And the second part of it, which again, I learned from one of my mentors, is what he calls catch people doing right. And this is great. This is great as a parent too.
Yeah.
is that, you know, we're always so quick to, you know, don't color on the wall, don't do this, don't do that, as opposed to, I love that you did this, but always just pointing out the positives.
Yep.
And that's that ratio, right? It's the positives. And like you said at the very top of the show, I think is, you know, we're more in tune to that negative. And so if we can really overemphasize the positive, then they're going to hear it with a different ear. They're going to say, oh yeah, this is going to help me be better. This is going to help me, you know, grow the business and, you know, raise the tide for everybody. Yeah. And that's what helps me. I'd love to hear, you know, your insight on, you know, what you think.
Yeah. So there's two things that, you know, taking something from a principle to applying it to application. And so when you get what you said reminded me of what Google created. And so there's a research study project or research that's called Project Aristotle. And what Project Aristotle is where Google wanted to do a self-evaluation. Okay, what makes us, number one, what makes us the top? And it wasn't we have the smartest engineers from all over the world. We have a whole bunch of people collaborating. It was one simple thing, and it was the emotional safety and security that they feel at work. Every single idea that they says gets validated, even though it might not get implemented. And so they know what they say isn't going to have anything in an implication on their position or their promotion or demotion or where they are. It is actually welcomed. And so because they feel that there's no idea or no question or no answer or comment that's going to get them, you know, exiled from the group, that's allows them to do that. I think another thing what we fail to do is put in our calendars, I need to compliment my team today. That's okay, right? I in my calendar personally, I have get flowers for Taylor. I have get flowers. Now, am I 100% on when I do that, or even write her a text message? I have that in my calendar. What are my to-dos today? I need to affirm her. I need to, just like what you said, you know, I need to let my kids know, oh my gosh, I love how you put your shoes, your dirty shoes, like on the carpet. I love how straight of an arrow they are. I mean, look how organized they are. And so because we are feeling like time is not of the essence, I don't think like we feel that we have so much time. We have to maximize and become more efficient with the time that we're given. And so with that being said, is that, you know, one of the things that I you know, remind and recommend organizations to do is that put it in your calendar. Today is a positive accomplishment day. Every single, oh my gosh, I just love the way that you tucked in your shirt. Your name badge right here. It's perfect. I mean, it is a straight line. I loved the way that you parked your car in the parking lot. You're literally straight between the lines, because once we start doing that, then people feel that we actually value them. It's not that we just want them to get something done. We actually see the person that they are. And I learned very specifically from Ken Norton Jr. of, Coach, how do you coach all of us, which come from different places in the United States? We have different backgrounds, different socio and economical backgrounds. How do you do that? He says, I coach the person. If you coach the person, the player follows. So how does that, you know, relate to the business world, to corporate settings? There's people behind the position. Doesn't matter if it's VP, CEO, you know, operator, manager, supervisors. There's a person in there. Speak to the heart of the person, and the person with the name tag, the badge, and the business card, they will follow. But we forget that. We speak to the business card, to the name tag, to the badge first, and then we hope that the person follows. See the person that wears the uniform, and the person who wears the uniform will fight that much more for you.
Yeah, and I think that's been something in my coaching with you know, businesses and entrepreneurs I've been doing for the past 8 years. And I you know, I have this pyramid, and people are at the foundation, you know, of the pyramid. It's not the other way around. People are at the foundation because they're the most important. Right. And I love the calendar thing because that's something I do personally. So every day, and this has been for a few years now, I'll send. Well, I journal, you know, I journal gratitude, but I specifically journal separately something I'm grateful for my wife. And, you know, there was a few years ago that I journaled the different ways that I love her, and did that for 365 days and put it in a book and gave it to her.
Gave it to her for her birthday.
Yeah, for anniversary.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
And with pictures and all that. And she said it was the best gift she's ever gotten. So I do the gratitude thing for her, and now I send her the ones from last year. So I'm sending her the ones from last year, and then I'm journaling, for this year.
Yeah.
So I do that, and I have the reminder that pops up, on my phone to do that and to send it. So I'm going to put that for my team. I'm going to put that in my phone and my team and my calendar for my team to do that as well. Because we've talked about it, but that helps to translate into action, like you talked about. So that's super important. Well, you and I could probably talk about that kind of stuff a lot. That might have to be a whole separate episode we do about that stuff. But I wanted to give some honor to the theme of the show. We've talked about it a lot, about heroes and the different superheroes in your life and people that made you who you are. And I think you've, without realizing it, you've checked the boxes of the acronym of HERO. You've honored your purpose. I know you engage people in your mission. You ripple out your message to spread positive change. That's literally what you're doing right now. And I think you've opened your heart to the world by, sharing a bit of who you are truly, Thomas R. Williams. So as far as we, kind of near the end of the show here, I want to take it back to that spark moment that I talked about. Okay. That spark moment, which, as we coined on this show, is that moment in time that creates a ripple effect that goes far and beyond that initial act. So it could be with, Coach Santa Padre, I think that's how you say it, when he would call you, right, to get you to first practice, or, what your mother did. But share a time either when someone had an impact on you, or where you've had an impact on someone else that you found out later was something that really changed their life.
Yep. Okay. So I have to give two. I'm going to ask for forgiveness as opposed to for permission, because I think there's an opportunity here to speak to two people. I'm going to speak to the first person as a mentor, or who is the hero. And I'm going to talk about something very, very important. And I'll say both of them very quickly. So the first one was that spark moment was my mom. So I'm in middle school, and we were doing our yard duties on the weekend. And so I'm raking and mowing the grass, and she's trying to figure out where she wants to hang this pot on the doorstep. And so she goes, "Thomas, come over here. Let me show you how to hang a pot." Right. So as a single mom, wants to show me how to be a man, doing all these things. And so she says to me, "Come hang this pot." And I walked over to her and I give her the excuse I used to give all the time. "Mom, I'm going to make so much money. I'm going to pay somebody to do that. I don't learn how to do that." She paused, because normally she'd be like, "All right, whatever." But in this moment in particularly, she paused and she changed her whole disposition towards me. She came down off her ladder and she said, "Thomas, I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how much famous you become or successful you become. Never forget the most important thing you are called to do is affect mankind." She's talking about my legacy. She wasn't talking about my bank account. She wasn't talking about my net worth. She wasn't talking about graduating or getting a degree. She was talking about legacy. Mm-hmm. And it's not about what you do, but it's about who you do it for and who you leave it to. Right. So that's the first one. That's the mentor. That's the mentor person, or the hero side. The second side is the person who's on the journey aspiring to become something. So many times, Rick, we put our goals in a light, we put it on a pedestal, which means we are looking up at it, that it is bigger than us. It means it's more important than us. I was going into my senior year in college, and it didn't look like it was going to happen. My professional dream was going to take place, or was going to happen. And I went and talked to Coach Norton, and I said, "Coach, basically what I was asking for is almost like, let me quit. Give me permission to quit. Because you and I both know this isn't going to happen." Like at that time, I'd only started 4 games my whole career. I was between defense, special teams, and offense. I was like the jack of all, master of none. And I walked into his office and I said, "Coach, what's the reason to fight a fight that you don't feel like you can win?" And ultimately, what I was saying is, like, why should I keep going and quest on this dream of running into the NFL it's not going to happen. And I was like, "Coach, I just want to live out my senior year. I'll probably get a job next year, and I'll just have a normal life." And normal meaning something that doesn't get any better, just kind of stays the same. And he gave me the most important advice that I would love to be able to give your listeners. He put down his marker because he was drawing the plays and practice plan for the day. And he says, if you give everything you have to the NFL and they still don't want you, maybe they don't deserve you. And in that moment, Rick, he gave me the power, saying, wait a minute, I'm pursuing you, and I'm going to let you know if you're important to me, as opposed to the opposite way around. I'm going to wait for you to pick me and select me as though I'm important to you. He gave me my power. And you know what? I took it and I ran with it. And that day, I thought that I was just as important as the dream that I wanted to. And so I take that with me every single place that I go. And what it does is that it allows me to feel on the same position and level. Not that it is important, but I am important. Same way when we go get it for a job interview, we're not being interviewed. We're interviewing you to see if this is a place where I want to spend my time. I want to leave my family and I want to pursue the next level of my career. So what I want to remind people, first and foremost, we're constantly showing and teaching people about a legacy. What will yours be? Secondly, the thing you're pursuing, you're just as important as you think it is to you. So remember, it's not bigger than you. You're just as big as it.
Bam. If I could drop my mic, I'd drop my mic for you like that. Those are two beautiful spark moments. Thank you very much for sharing both of them. No forgiveness needed in that instance, Thomas. Those were amazing. And truly, because I know that what Coach Norton shared with you, I know that's something that you shared with others, right? That you share when you speak and do your trainings and everything, that you share that with others. And so that ripple effect continues far and wide from what he shared with you.
Yes, sir.
Perfect example of spark moment. Thank you very much. So I know I'll tell people straight up, I know you're not on social media, but where's the best place for people to learn more about you, find out and connect and everything?
Yeah, so you could come to the website, which is thomasrwilliams.com. There you can find out how to get in contact with me, through the message and emails and things of that nature. You can also get books from Amazon, and then on the website, it will tell you a little bit more about each book, the books that I've written, and would love to connect. If there's questions, if there's something that stood out, one of the best compliments you can ever give a speaker, facilitator, or podcast guest is not just say, hey, I loved the episode, but could say, what did you love about the episode? What stuck out to you? So feel free to write me, let me know, if you have a question, we can dive into it a little bit more, or even just to say, hey, I love when you said this. I love when Rick asked you this, because that is how we continue to, do it for who and why we do it, which is you, the listener, the people who are also on your journey. And if there's anything that I've done or said that will help you so that you can help others and also give that ripple, let us know, because we would love to hear from you.
Extremely well said. I think I need to take that soundbite and I'm going to make that a little edit at the end of every show, for everybody. That's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah. So one final question, Thomas, and it's something, I like being unscripted and just going where the conversation is, but there's a couple things that I always ask every guest, because our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people within 5 years, which will come very shortly, of launching our social impact social media platform. And that may be one that you can consider, coming back on, because it's all going to be about, positivity and empowering others and everything, and not your typical type of platform. But we know we can't do it alone. We know we need the help of impactful social impact heroes like yourself to help show others the way. Because a lot of people feel, as I once did, that you're too small to make a difference, right? Who am I to change the world, so to speak, right? So I value your thoughts and opinions. You've dropped some great knowledge on everybody, tons of wisdom. Thank you very much for everything you've shared. So I'm going to ask you to peer into the future, our iSpark Change crystal ball, and tell our audience, what can the world become if everyone starts taking action like you did and believes that they can have an impact on our future?
So I will leave you with a quote that we constantly say on the John Gordon team, is that sometimes you're the star of the team. Other times you're supposed to support the star of the team. But always remember that the team is the star. And so what we can become is more connected, less ego, more purpose, more mission, less, okay, this is what I think we should do, as opposed to this is what we're doing. And what I mean by that is that you don't always have to have the answer to be a solution. You can help other people who have a solution become the answer. And so one of the things that I love about being connected with the team is that it's not like golf or tennis where it's all on you. Coach Ron Rivera used to tell us all the time in Carolina, I don't need one guy doing 11 jobs. I need 11 guys doing their job. And so we need to find out, what is the mission? Where's the focus? Where's the direction that we're going? Become more united and more connected, and understand that you might not always have the answer, but follow somebody who does. Get on mission and on board with what they're doing. Support in any way that you can. Connect in all costs. And one by one person, one street, one city, one community, one state, one country, one at a time, we will become united.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Thomas. It was amazing. I really, really appreciate the time and the conversation.
Loved it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for taking time today. Thank you, Thomas, for sharing your heart and wisdom with our audience. You came in, you over-delivered, as I knew you would. Your desire to impact others, to be great, is clearly evident. You're filled with passion, humility, and you lead with a heart of resilience and gratitude, which tells me you're going to have success in all facets of life. And this is only the beginning of your time as a social impact hero. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Impact Heroes, it's our stories that connect us all, and we loved hearing Thomas's today. Thomas R. Williams, you're not only an inspiring and amazing human being, you truly are an iSpark Chain's social impact hero. We'll see y'all next time.
Do you want Rick to speak at your event? Here's what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
I absolutely loved his performance. It made me feel some type of way.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event, hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickcornelis.com to book him today.
Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.